welcome to this edition of Wake Up and Live with the Arts. I'm Sue Johnson, your host. We are delighted to be here at the Venerable Rainey Institute, East 55th in Cleveland, beautiful Ohio. And we are thrilled to introduce a guest from the Beck Center, in a way. Actually, I found out he's from Chicago, and his name is Jon Martinez, who is now affiliated by being the director and choreographer of the Scottsboro Boys, which is a production coming up at the Beck Center at the in the very near future, January. I forgot the dates.
February 7th begins performances.
Are there previews, or is that the opening night?
The opening night.
February 7th, and it runs till the 23rd,
yes.
right? Oh, February 23rd. If there are 5 people in Cleveland who don't know where the Beck Center is, it's at 17801 Detroit Avenue in Lakewood. Plenty of off-street parking lot. So come out and see the Scottsboro Boys, which Jon is going to tell us about. Give us, besides a welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, give us a synopsis of the Scottsboro Boys. And most of us know the name, what the Scottsboro Boys is about. But
yeah, so the musical version of the Scottsboro Boys is a musical adaptation of the story that the true story about 9 boys who were falsely accused of raping 2 women in 1931. And Kander and Ebb, who are most known for writing the musicals Chicago and Cabaret.
Yes, they are well known. Yeah.
That was their last collaboration as a writing team. They teamed up with the Broadway Director Choreographer Susan Stroman to set this story in the style of a minstrel show.
That is so fascinating. What is a minstrel show for the people who are not familiar?
Yeah, a minstrel show is actually one of the oldest American art forms, older than vaudeville, slightly. And so minstrel shows when mostly white men dressed up in blackface and performed skits and different dance numbers, taking a lot of dance styles and tropes from the African American culture and exploiting them.
Yes, and I don't know if there are any still left of minstrel shows, whether they've been done away with completely or...
In America, they definitely faded in around the mid-50s, just because of how racist they were.
Of course.
However, in Britain, there was a minstrel show that made it to the TV, I want to say well into the 80s. And also you can just find examples of stylistic descendants, I guess you would say, of minstrel shows still in our culture.
Okay. And now it's a little weird to me. I like that word. A little odd. The true story of the Scottsboro Boys is not a pretty story, not a pleasant story. How in the world is it set to music? And choreography, because we got to talk about you're a dancer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kander and Ebb, you take a show like Chicago, and they took the art form of vaudeville, the American art form of vaudeville, to highlight the pretty absurd things that the American justice system lets people get away with.
Yes.
And so they took that to amplify it in a way that when an audience is entertained, they'll listen. And they took Cabaret, taking a similar art form, and setting it within this pretty realistic story. And again, if an audience is entertained, they're going to listen. So you take a story like the Scottsboro Boys, which is a very tragic story, and if you take minstrel style numbers to carry this story along, then suddenly the audience is entertained, but at the same time it is expanding on themes and metaphors within their story and showing it through music and dance.
Weren't the Scottsboro Boys eventually vindicated many years after the fact?
They were in 2013. So from 1931, from being accused to many years of trials and appeals, they were cleared of all charges in 2013.
Were any of them still living? No,
Not at
I
that.
didn't think
the,
so.
The last remaining Scottsboro boy passed away in 1989.
Okay. So now you are in charge of the cast of Scottsboro Boys. How many are in your cast, the ensemble?
10, 11. We have 12. We have 12 cast members in the show, and the Beck Center collaborates with Baldwin Wallace University.
Well, that's Vicki Bussard, Victoria.
Yes,
Yes.
Who is head of the music theater program, and so the two organizations team up and put on this show, in which it creates an opportunity for the students of Baldwin Wallace to have a full run of a show in a professional theater. And this time around, we have one local actor in the show, as well as an alumni of Baldwin Wallace joining us for the production.
Okay.
So we're really excited that it's with the 9th collaboration with the Beck Center. Baldwin Wallace is a testament to their music theater program that we're able to cast a show like this, which it's all African American actors except one character in the show, and a testament to the program that how diverse they are.
And for those here again, there are folks who may not know Victoria Bussard has developed quite a name, and her Baldwin Wallace program is well known for sending folks to New York, Broadway, getting cast and performing and great positions in New York, having come out of Vicki's Baldwin Wallace program. And of course, now one of the fun things about Beck Center, directed by Scott Spence, is that it has equity contracts. It's an equity house now. So our local equity actors have now another opportunity to perform on a local stage and not have to leave town, or not have all the New Yorkers have all of the roles in the plays. How did Scott and Vicki find you as a director choreographer?
I actually met Vicki when she did Lizzie the musical in Chicago. I was her assistant on that show, and last year she brought me over to Cleveland, which was my first time being in Cleveland, to direct and choreograph the regional premiere of Be More Chill, which was at Playhouse Square.
Yes.
And while we were in rehearsals for that, she reached out to me and asked if I was interested in coming back and to the school to direct and choreograph, and I was having a great time. The students are incredibly talented. A director choreographer's dream, I would say. And she asked if I wanted to come back, and I did, and she said, "What about Scottsboro Boys?" And here we are.
Here we are. Now, as a younger person, did you study acting and theater and choreography in college, or you, it sounds strange, off the streets, you just came by it naturally?
Well, I went to Columbia College in Chicago, and I was part of the music theater program. I joined the music theater program with the idea that I'd be a performer, and I had a professor at the time who asked if I was interested in assisting her. And I said, I didn't know what that meant. She was directing and choreographing the show at the time that was at school. And after I agreed to assist her, I thought to myself, I want to be a choreographer. And so I assisted a lot in Chicago, which is where I'm based, working professionally while I was in school, and many, many years later, it stuck.
Now, with choreography, how did you come upon that career? Who inspired you, or what inspired you to say that choreography, dancing is it?
I went to a local studio growing up. I'm from the south side of Chicago.
The south side?
Yes.
That's my side. You had relatives there. On South Vernon. That's where it was back in the day.
I grew up in the Bridgeport and McKinley Park neighborhoods. And there was a very small studio there, and they let me take ballet and jazz classes. If I did the Mexican folkloric dancing, they needed more boys. And so that's where I got a lot of my training and started to train a lot more seriously when I was in high school. I went to Curie High School, which is partly a performing arts high school in Chicago. And that is where I did a lot of my formal technical dance training. And then I think I was always choreographing, without even really knowing it, whether that was in my living room and
in front of the mirror,
and learning, for choreography from movies like West Side Story and Grease, and it wasn't until I was in college that I thought, this could be a thing that I could do for real.
That sounds wonderful. Now, as you did that, of course, it wasn't all, as the expression goes, peaches and creams. What were some of the challenges that you have faced in your personal life, your career, that you've had to deal with to become such a successful young director and choreographer?
Well, they use the phrase "paying your dues" a lot.
They still do, honey. They still do. In fact, I think I'm still paying mine, to tell you the truth.
I don't think you ever stop paying your dues. But I've been so fortunate to be taken under the wing by many, many very, very talented directors and choreographers in Chicago who I've assisted. And you in the rehearsal room and you learn from them and everything. And I think choreographically, the challenges are, you want to find your style. You think of choreographers like Bob Fosse, Jerome Robbins.
Yes.
You see a very specific thing and it's them. And not that that's something that I think every choreographer has to have. I think the style comes from when you just rely on what comes natural. That's what creates your style.
Yes.
And so I think the challenge is when you get material, when you get shows, figuring out, for me, I have to figure out the way the show moves, and that's always a challenge because there's a lot of factors. There's take a show like Scottsboro Boys. It's very period, very specific style, which took a lot of research on my part to do. Because you want it to be authentic, and then you take into account the actors you have. It's very important that the style of the choreography is created off of them, and they're not just given something to execute. It's a collaboration. At least for me, that's
right.
Really
that's your part of your style.
Exactly. And so that's always a challenge. And as you get older, I think, and I have many more years to go, but you with every show it leaves a little imprint, and you take what you can out of it, what you learned, and then you go forward. And communication too. It's always important to be able to create a ensemble in a show to and to create a line of communication where they trust you.
Yes. That's wonderful. Now, the reason I asked Jon Martinez about challenges being a choreographer, we haven't even talked about being a director, but is because Wake Up and Live's Actor Studio has been awarded a grant by the Cuyahoga Arts and Culture funding source, and we are doing a project about a brand new Wake Up and Live Day, miracles, magic, and makeovers to transform your life into living a higher, better life. That was not quite it. And part of that project has to address folks who have had challenges, which we all have had, of course, and how they dealt with them and how they have either overcome them or are in the process of overcoming challenges, because that's what we have to do in order to transform ourselves into living better, higher lives. So that was the basis for that question. Now, this question is just to be nosy. What are some of your favorite musical shows that you either have choreographed or would love to, or they've inspired you?
I think my favorite musical of all time is West Side Story, and I actually get to do it for the first time later this year in South Bend, Indiana. And I would have to say I think that's my favorite because it's the first exposure I had to a musical, the movie.
Okay.
Many people, that is their first exposure to musicals. And I think also to seeing people of color represented.
Yes.
And that is what, as a young person, I really latched onto.
Mm-hmm.
And the other show I would say is probably my favorite, and a dream show to do would have to be Chicago.
Okay. Now he's a modern guy. Show you how far back I go. Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, the women.
Ginger
Rogers, and she also danced with Fred Astaire a lot, not just Ginger Rogers, but that era of musical and dancing. Have you studied any of them or looked at any of their work?
Oh yeah, that's that was definitely part of training in college when they teach us rep. They teach us a lot of that
And
that
Bo
style.
Jangles, remember him at all?
He's a big part of my research for the Scottsboro Boys.
Okay.
Playing off of the style and what he represented at the time when he was performing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And where do you go from here? When this project closes February 23rd at the Beck Center, and be sure to call 216-521-2540 for your tickets for the Scottsboro Boys. So once you leave the project, where will you be headed?
Well, I'll be headed back to Chicago.
To rest or to have another production?
I go right into production of Grey Gardens, the musical.
Okay.
Being presented in Chicago.
Excellent. Well, you are a wonderful person, and I've got to thank Julie Gilliland, who is the Director of Marketing out at Beck, for introducing us and arranging for me to meet you for this interview and to talk about the Scottsboro Boys. And notice that it takes place in February, which is typically Black History Month, and a lot of theaters do Black-oriented plays. And those of you who either don't know the history of the Scottsboro Boys or want a modern uptake, be sure to go out to the Beck Center and see Jon Martinez's work as a director and choreographer. Before we close, as a director, what's the hardest thing you have to face with your ensemble, your cast?
I think it's not even facing the ensemble, it's facing the audience. That's the scariest part.
Well, that's very true, yes.
You just hope as a director that you're able to create a world and an experience for the audience.
Oh, that's beautiful. We got to save that one. That's very artistic. Yeah. Okay, Jon, we have one more interview we need to do, but I want to thank you and Julie for joining us. You are a delight.
Thank you for
And I
having me.
hate to admit it, but this is a play that, due to circumstances, we won't be able to check out. But we'll see it through your eyes when we do the video.
Yeah, thank you.
For YouTube. Okay, so thank you, Jon Martinez. I'm Sue Johnson, your host, along with James McGilvray, our videographer, and Lester Bryant Sr., our editor. We want to thank you for joining us at this edition of Wake Up and Live with the Arts. And be sure to wake up and live with the arts every day.